everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive with us. You know, we love getting to the nitty-gritty, and today we're looking at how New York City became the fashion capital it is today.
It's such a fascinating topic. There's so many factors that go into it.
Right, like, you know, obviously the city's got this electric energy and it's super diverse, and then obviously the designers who've, helped make the city what it is today.
Yeah, it's like this perfect storm of creativity and, I guess, ambition.
And to really kind of get into that, we're going to look at the stories of two iconic designers, Ralph Lauren and Alexander Wang.
Oh, yeah. Good choices.
Yeah.
They're so different, but both, like, quintessential New York in a way.
Totally. And their stories, I think, teach us a lot about entrepreneurship and just, like, the hustle it takes to build a brand.
Definitely. And you know what's really cool is how their journeys kind of mirror the evolution of the fashion scene as a whole.
Okay, so let's kick things off with Ralph Lauren. I mean, everyone knows him, right? Like that classic all-American aesthetic. But what's crazy is he started out selling ties from a drawer. Can you believe that?
It's a true rags to riches story.
Yeah.
Yeah. He had no fashion background, no family money. He just had this vision. And he hustled like crazy.
He even changed his name from Lifshitz to Lauren Wright. Like, talk about understanding branding.
Oh, yeah. He was a marketing genius from the get-go. I mean, at the time, European fashion houses had everything right. They were like the ultimate luxury. So by choosing Lauren, he created this name that sounded American, but still classy.
Yeah. So he was already thinking about building this American dream brand, like, right from the start.
Oh, totally. And he went way beyond just clothes. I mean, think about the polo logo. The polo player on horseback.
Right, like what does that even say? It's not just a shirt, it's a whole vibe.
It's aspirational.
Yeah.
Right? It's wealth, leisure, tradition. It's that romanticized version of the American dream. Even if most people buying his stuff weren't actually living that life.
And he really leaned into that imagery even more with things like designing the suits for that Great Gatsby movie in the 70s.
Ooh, such a good move. The Great Gatsby is like the ultimate American dream story, right? All that glamour and elegance. By connecting his designs to that movie, Lauren basically solidified that image in people's minds.
It's like he was selling entry into a world.
And he did the same thing with the Team USA Olympic uniforms.
Right.
Like aligning himself with these big cultural moments,
He was thinking big picture for sure. And what I find super interesting is how he expanded beyond just clothing. Like he created this whole Ralph Lauren universe with home decor restaurants even.
A total lifestyle brand. That's a key lesson for any entrepreneur. Right? It's not just about selling one thing. It's about creating a whole world around your brand.
He was way ahead of the curve. And it's interesting to see how that paved the way for other designers like Alexander Wang, who took a totally different approach, but with that same goal of building a super strong brand.
And that's where we'll see that evolution of the New York fashion scene. How Wang tapped into a different side of the city's energy.
Let's get into that. Wang's story is pretty wild. He dropped out of Parsons at 22 to start his own label. Like, that takes some serious guts.
It does seem like a huge risk, but Wang was super calculated. He really knew his audience, and he had this vision for something new. So what do you know about the fashion scene in New York back then?
Well, high-end fashion was still a big thing, obviously, but there was this, underground streetwear scene starting to emerge, especially downtown.
Exactly, and Wang saw that. He understood that people were craving something different, something edgier, more accessible.
Yeah.
More reflective of the city's raw energy.
He was speaking to a different generation for sure.
Yeah, and he really nailed that downtown cool kid aesthetic. Think about his early collections. Those oversized silhouettes, the slouchy, almost androgynous style. It was like a breath of fresh air compared to all the polished traditional stuff that was everywhere.
It was like he was redefining what it meant to be fashionable. Not about being perfectly put together, more like effortless cool.
And it totally resonated with the downtown scene, the art, the music, all that creative energy. Wang's clothes felt authentic, like they belonged on the street, not just on a runway.
And then there was that huge moment when he won the CFDA Vogue Fashion Fund Award in 2008. That launched him into the stratosphere.
Oh yeah, totally. That award is like the golden ticket in fashion. It gave him instant credibility and opened so many doors.
I bet it helped him attract investors and really grow the brand even more. And he went beyond clothing too, right?
Yep, he did the whole accessories, footwear, fragrances thing. He understood that you got to offer that full lifestyle experience if you want to build a truly successful brand.
And speaking of expanding, we can't forget about his time as creative director at Balenciaga.
Yeah, from 2012 to 2015, I think. That was a huge deal.
To be running his own label and then leading a major European fashion house at the same time, that's next level.
It shows how versatile he was as a designer, to be able to adapt his aesthetic to such different brands.
So we've got these two incredibly successful designers, Ralph Lauren and Alexander Wang. Totally different styles, but both made it big. What do you think their stories tell us about the New York fashion scene overall?
I think they show how New York is this breeding ground for innovation.
Yeah.
It's a city that rewards risk takers, people who aren't afraid to push boundaries.
And it's constantly evolving, right? You've got the legacy brands like Lauren, who built their empires on classic American style. And then you've got the disruptors like Wang, who are redefining what fashion means for a new generation.
Exactly. And it's not just about the designers themselves. New York has this whole ecosystem that supports the fashion industry. You've got the garment district, the fashion schools like Parsons, and of course the media giants like Vogue and Elle shaping the conversation.
It's like all these pieces come together to create this perfect storm.
It is. And you can't underestimate the role of the city itself. New York's energy, its diversity, it's constantly changing. All of that feeds into the fashion scene.
It's like the city itself is a source of inspiration.
Totally. So now that we've talked about these two designers, what stands out to you most about their journeys?
Honestly, it's how they both built such powerful brands that go beyond clothes. They tapped into something deeper. Emotions, aspirations, a sense of belonging.
That's a really good point. They understood that a brand is more than just a logo or a product. It's a story, an experience, a feeling.
And they weren't afraid to take risks, to stay true to their visions, even if it meant doing things differently.
For sure. They were both strategic, but they also had that passion, that belief in themselves.
That's something any entrepreneur can learn from, I think, no matter what industry they're in.
Yeah, it's about finding that balance between strategy and passion. So thinking about their journeys, what do you think are the key takeaways for anyone looking to build a successful brand?
Well, I think both Ralph Lauren and Alexander Wang show us that understanding your audience is key. Like, they were so in tune with what their customers wanted, even anticipating needs that people didn't even know they had yet.
That's huge. It's not just about making something you think is cool, it's about making something that connects with your target market on a deep level.
And they both understood the power of storytelling. They weren't just selling clothes, they were selling a lifestyle and aspiration.
Right. They created these narratives that people could buy into, and that's what made them so successful.
And they weren't afraid to evolve and adapt as the market changed. Lauren started with ties, then clothing, then a whole lifestyle empire. Wang started with that downtown edgy aesthetic and then transitioned into leading a major European fashion house.
They both show the importance of being flexible and willing to take risks. You can't just rest on your laurels. You got to constantly be innovating and pushing yourself.
It's so cool to see how those entrepreneurial lessons apply beyond just fashion. Whether you're building a tech startup, a restaurant, whatever, those same principles hold true.
Totally. Understanding your audience, crafting a compelling story, being willing to adapt. Those are the keys to building a brand that lasts.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into New York fashion, I want to leave our listeners with something to think about. We've seen how both Ralph Lauren and Alexander Wang created these iconic brands, but what do you think makes a fashion brand truly iconic? Is it just the clothes, or is it something more?
That's the question, isn't it? I think it goes beyond just the designs. It's about the emotions they evoke, the aspirations they represent, the cultural impact they have. It's about creating something that resonates on a deeper level, something that becomes part of the culture.
It's about creating something that stands the test of time, something people will still be talking about and wearing years, even decades down the line.
Exactly. And that applies to any brand, not just fashion.
Yeah.
Think about the brands that have really made a mark on the world. They all have that something extra, that intangible quality that makes them stand out and endure.
It's been so fascinating exploring the stories of Ralph Lauren and Alexander Wang. They show us that building a successful brand takes vision hustle and a deep understanding of storytelling.
And as you move forward with your own ventures, think about what makes a brand truly iconic. What story do you want to tell? What emotions do you want to evoke? What kind of impact do you want to make?
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the heart of New York fashion. We hope you've gotten some valuable insights and inspiration along the way.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
He was going for something totally different, yeah.
Totally. And, he had this knack for capturing that downtown cool kid look. Like, think back to his early collections, those oversized silhouettes, this slouchy, almost androgynous style.
Yeah, it was a pretty big departure from all that, polished traditional stuff that was everywhere.
Right. And it just resonated so perfectly with that downtown scene. The art, the music, all that creative energy. Like, Wang's clothes felt like they belonged on the street, not just on some runway,
Totally. And then, of course, there was that big moment when he won the CFDA Vogue Fashion Fund Award in 2008.
Oh, yeah, that was huge.
I mean, that basically put him on the map, right?
For sure. That award is like the ultimate seal of approval in the fashion world. It gave him instant credibility and opened up so many doors.
I bet it helped him attract investors and really scale the brand, too. And he expanded beyond clothing, too, didn't he?
Yeah, did. He went into accessories, footwear, even fragrances. He was smart.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he understood that a brand needs to offer that full lifestyle experience if it's going to really succeed.
And speaking of expansion, we can't forget about his time as creative director at Balenciaga.
Yeah, that was a pretty big deal.
I mean, running his own label and then leading a major European fashion house at the same time. It's amazing he pulled it off.
Yeah, it really speaks to his talent and his business app.
Yeah,
you know?
Absolutely. And it shows how versatile he was as a designer, to be able to adapt his aesthetic to such different brands. So we've got these two incredibly successful designers, Ralph Lauren and Alexander Wang, representing totally different styles and approaches, but both achieving major success. What do you think their stories tell us about the New York fashion scene as a whole?
Well, I think it shows how New York is this incredible breeding ground for fashion innovation. It's a city that embraces risk takers, people who aren't afraid to push boundaries and challenge the status quo.
And it's a city that's constantly evolving, too. You've got these legacy brands like Ralph Lauren who built their empires on that classic American style. And then you've got the disruptors like Alexander Wang who are redefining what fashion means for a new generation.
Right. And it's not just about the designers themselves either. New York has this whole ecosystem that supports the fashion industry. You've got the garment district with all its manufacturers and suppliers. You've got the fashion schools like Parsons churning out new talent. And of course, all the media giants like Vogue and Elle who are shaping the conversation.
It's like all these pieces come together to create this like perfect storm of creativity and commerce.
It really is.
Yeah.
And, you know, you can't underestimate the role of the city itself. New York's energy, its diversity, its constant state of flux, all of that feeds into the fashion scene and makes it what it is.
It's like the city itself is a source of inspiration.
Totally. So now that we've looked at these two iconic designers, what stands out to you most about their journeys?
You know, honestly, it's how they both built such strong brands that go way beyond just clothes. They tapped into something deeper. Emotions, aspirations, a sense of belonging.
That's a really great point. They understood that a brand isn't just a logo or a product. It's a story, an experience, a feeling. And they were both masters at creating those narratives.
And they weren't afraid to take risks, you know, to stay true to their visions, even if it meant going against the grain.
Yeah, they had that unwavering belief in themselves and their ideas. That's something any entrepreneur can learn from, regardless of their industry.
Absolutely. It's about finding that sweet spot between strategy and passion.
So thinking about their journeys, what do you think are the key takeaways for anyone looking to build a successful brand? What lessons can we extract from their experiences?
Well, I think they both show how important it is to really know your audience. Like, they were so tuned in to what their customers wanted, what they were looking for.
It's not about making something you think is cool.
Sure.
It's about creating something that really speaks to your target market.
And they were both such great storytellers. Like, they weren't just selling clothes, they were selling this whole lifestyle.
Yeah, they created these narratives around their brands that people could buy into. That's a big part of what made them so successful.
And they weren't afraid to evolve. You know, like Lauren started with ties, then expanded into clothing, and then built this whole lifestyle empire. And Wang started with that downtown edgy aesthetic and then ended up leading a major European fashion house.
It shows how important it is to be flexible and willing to take risks. You can't just get comfortable. You have to keep pushing yourself to stay ahead.
And it's interesting how those same lessons apply to so many other industries too. Like, it doesn't matter if you're building a tech startup, a restaurant, whatever. Those principles still hold true.
Absolutely. Understanding your audience, telling a compelling story, being willing to adapt. Those are the keys to building a brand that really lasts.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into New York fashion, I want to leave our listeners with a question. We've talked about how both Ralph Lauren and Alexander Wang created these iconic brands. But what do you think makes a fashion brand truly iconic? What are those ingredients, you know? Is it just the clothes or is it something more than that?
That's a good question. I think it goes beyond just the designs themselves. It's about the feeling they evoke, you know, the aspirations they represent, the impact they have on the culture. It's about creating something that really resonates with people, something that becomes part of the fabric of society.
Something that stands the test of time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that's true for any brand, not just in fashion. Well, I think about the brands that have really made a mark on the world. They all have that something special, that intangible quality that sets them apart.
It's been awesome exploring the stories of Ralph Lauren and Alexander Wang today. I think they really highlight what it takes to build a successful brand, that vision, that hustle, and that deep understanding of the power of storytelling.
And as you all go out there and build your own businesses, think about what makes a brand truly iconic. What story do you want to tell? What emotions do you want to evoke? What kind of impact do you want to have on the world?
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the heart of New York fashion. We hope you learned a thing or two and that you're feeling inspired to go out there and make your own mark.
Keep exploring, keep learning, and keep pushing the boundaries. See you next time.